Hello, friends. Welcome to Verbal to Visual. Thanks for joining during this live stream today. As soon as you are able to see and hear me okay, drop a hello and a everything's a-okay in the text chat, just so that I know that things are going smoothly here. I'm super excited to chat with you today about a new project that I'm working on. Which, as you might imagine, based on the screen that's being shared, is about kind of combining this tool Notion, which you may or may not be familiar with. I'll kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what the tool Notion is all about, but then how you might use that specific kind of note and knowledge management organization tool, how Sketchnoters specifically might use that tool. I think there's a lot of potential there that I'm excited to explore, and that's what we're gonna chat about today. Hello, with love, Feli. Hello, Vicky. Good to see you, Vic. Vicky, I don't know if you go by Vic or not. Jose Miguel says hello. Hey, two of Vicky's favorite things, Notion and Sketchnotes. That's awesome. I'm curious to hear how many Sketchnoters are already familiar with Notion, and maybe some of you are already using it. So that'll be cool to hear. And dive deeper for Sketchnoters that are already familiar with Notion, but maybe for folks that haven't heard about it, I think this might be a tool that you'll find to be really intriguing and interesting. Hi, Julie Ellis. Thanks for joining, Julie. Hello, Bob. Vic is cool too. And Vic uses it for everything. Awesome. Well, we are going to hop right into it. I've got some sketches that I'm going to share with you today. Some screen sharing that I'll do of some browsers in a second here, but do keep the comments going in the text chat. I love to have that as a reference throughout a live stream like this. So whenever you have either a strong reaction to something I share, hopefully mostly good reactions, but hey, if it's a bad reaction too, I want to hear about that. But then also any questions that you might have as I am describing this new project, please do drop those in the live text feed. Hello from Bia, Brazilian here. With love, Feli says, I'm more familiar with Notion than sketchnoting, but I'm planning to do your course. Awesome. And Aurora Optima says, hello, I'm curious. Great. So with my fancy pants OBS tool here, let's go over to the iPad. I'm going to share some sketches here. First of all, hello, Sketchnoters. Welcome. Thanks for hanging out today. I am excited to share with you the new tool that I'm building. And what's kind of different about this project for me is that I am kind of thinking of it as a tool as opposed to the things that I've been creating so far within Verbal to Visual have been educational materials and a pretty cool community, especially those folks inside of Verbal to Visual's mighty network. Shout out to anyone enjoying that space and spending some time there and sharing your sketchnoting work. And that's what Verbal to Visual will continue to be about. Learning how to develop your sketchnoting skills and use them. This project is different because it's more within the realm of software. It's a tool that I hope that you find to be useful, and it's a way for you to do more with your sketchnotes. So kind of the scenario, the situation that we're talking about here is kind of picks up at that point when you've completed a sketchnote. You put some time into creating some sort of a visual summary. Maybe it's something you learned from an external source. Maybe it's part of a presentation that you gave or an article that you wrote. The question that we and I haven't yet dug too deeply into is what to do with those sketch notes after you've created them. Because I think there's a whole lot of potential for your sketch notes to have a life and to have impact on you and others after they're completed. And the tool that I am interested in building here gets at that, setting yourself up for long-term impact with the sketch notes that you create. So the things that you might do with your sketch notes, kind of the three main activities, the things that you would want to do with a completed sketch note. First of all, of course, you want to have a place to store your sketch notes, both as just like maybe a backup so that you have this thing you created in multiple locations. If you took it on pen and paper, you can take a photo of it and store it somewhere. Or even if you had it, if you're into digital sketchnoting and created it on your iPad, maybe it's within that project, within your Concepts app. Maybe even it's a photo on your camera roll, but you probably want it in some other place as well, just in case something happens to that device or that account. So this tool that I'm building here, Notion for Sketchnoters, will serve that purpose as a kind of repository and backup of all of your sketch notes. But you might also want to share those sketch notes with other people. I'm a proponent of learning in public. It's one of the resources inside of Verbal to Visual. And when you share your sketch notes and focus on the ideas within them and not so much the artistic quality, I think you are not only reinforcing your learning, you're also maybe kind of sparking some ideas in others who view your sketch notes. So having a place where you can easily share the sketch notes that you're working on and maybe have this public portfolio, this growing portfolio of sketch notes over time, that's another piece of this tool. But then equally exciting to me is what you can do with your collection of sketch notes over time. Ways you might reuse different sketch notes that you have created over the last few months, the last few years. To me, it's exciting when maybe you start working on a new project. And again, maybe it's a presentation you're giving, a blog post or an article that you want to write, being able to pull in old sketch notes that you've already created and use those as the starting point, as the building blocks for this thing that you want to share with other people. So that's another that's another purpose that I want this tool to serve, that ability to reuse the sketch notes that you've already created. And have a tool for accessing them and combining them in an easy and useful way. Riffing on that a little bit, what comes to mind, you may have seen, there's a video on Verbal to Visual's channel here about the second brain. It's called Sketchnoting and the Second Brain, where I share these sketch notes that I took of Ali Abdal's video about the second brain. And kind of the concept here is like creating some external structure and sources and storage to kind of extend what your brain is capable of, so that like you don't have to, keep everything top of mind in here. You have kind of this externalized brain that you're working with. And a lot of these ideas are really connected to sketchnoting as a form of note-taking, regularly capturing ideas in a visual format. Idea recycling is a big component of the second brain. I talked about that within the idea of reusing your sketch notes. One sketch note might serve a really useful role in multiple projects in the future. And part of this idea of the second brain is creating these intermediate packets, these kind of small chunks of information that allow you to kind of plug those ideas into the future projects that you work on. So like an individual sketch note and with maybe a little bit of a text description, that could be one of the intermediate packets, could be one of the bricks that you use multiple times in the future. With this idea of when you're able to start with abundance, start a new project with abundance, pulling in any relevant sketch note, you get over the fear of the blank page. And it just makes for a much easier starting point. And it makes it easier for your future self. When you have stored your ideas, stored your sketch notes in a way that that's easily retrievable. So all of these ideas about the second brain, they're very relevant for this tool that I'm building. If you want to dive deeper into these ideas, check out that video, Sketchnoting in the Second Brain. And there you can also find Ali Abdal's video about this same topic. Checking in on the text chat here. Vicky says, I love Notion, but do hate the fact that it can be so digital. I'm really excited to hear more about combining sketchnotes with Notion. Yeah, I love for the ability to kind of use this digital tool in potentially as minimal a way as you want, but still having it be this useful place to store and revisit your sketchnotes, even if you're only sketchnoting analog. Thank you, Suzanne. You rock as well. Hi, Keller. You're Miguel Cabral's mom. That's awesome. Miguel and I have had a couple of chats that have shown up on the YouTube channel here. He's doing super cool work within kind of computer science and programming tech world. So with that is kind of the backdrop for those folks that might be unfamiliar with Notion. Let me just share with you the Notion home screen, and just to give you a sense for like what this tool is and how they describe it. So you can see it here as an all-in-one workspace. A lot of folks use it for kind of a team management perspective. I will be sharing it just kind of from the individual's perspective because that's how I use it. But some common things that you might see here, you could think of it as like a team wiki, as a kind of repository for all of the most important information related to what an organization is up to. And that wiki kind of analogy can be true for what you're creating with your Notion setup as well. And maybe your sketch notes are the building blocks for these different knowledge hubs related to the topics that you're exploring regularly. It's kind of like your own, it has a potential to be like your own research library and a way to like document that research and keep track of it and connect it to like any sort of active projects that you're working on. So it has that kind of wiki component to it. It's also big on kind of project management and task management. A lot of, if you search YouTube for Notion, you'll see a lot of productivity-oriented setups. And there might be some elements of that I weave into this Notion for Sketchnoters tool, but it's kind of more around the organization and sharing of notes and ideas, and kind of having sketch notes as the building block, one of the main kind of individual chunks of this system that you can do more and more things with. So you might enjoy checking things out a little bit. They've got some interesting kind of case studies for what Notion might look like for personal use, for education. I think there's some interesting things on the personal use, some real, relatively basic stuff for just keeping track of information that you want access to as a place to take notes, organize things under different topics, keep anything that you're working on organized, track your tasks, even do some writing, using it as a place for brainstorming. Some people use it as a kind of self-improvement tool with some habit trackers, and building websites. This piece this component of Notion that allows you to have some parts of it public and some parts of it private. That's why I'm so excited about it for Sketchnoters, especially folks that are using sketchnoting as a way to kind of get their work out there. And maybe, they don't want to go through the process of like doing the whole Squarespace thing or like WordPress thing, figuring out how to start your own website or blog. There can be a lot to that might be a hurdle. I think Notion helps you overcome that hurdle really easily, like in a really kind of nice way. especially because it's paired with this kind of database-oriented private workspace that is a great starting point. So there's Notion. If you want to explore it more, check out that website. From there, I would like to give kind of a walkthrough of this project of Notion for Sketchnoters. I hope that background info has been kind of helpful. Before I hop there, let me do a quick check of the text chat. Donaldo says, love the idea of integrating sketchnoting with knowledge management concepts. Shout out to Donaldo. We had a one-on-one coaching call where he brought up knowledge management, and that's kind of what triggered my mind to like swing back to Notion. And Notion even like came on my radar again from an earlier coaching call like a year ago. So it has been thanks to folks like you that I've been exploring Notion specifically and the concept of knowledge management. So I was hoping you would hang out here, Donaldo. It's good to see you here. Thomas says, never thought of downloading Notion, but changed my mind after watching this. Okay, yeah. I hope that maybe you're intrigued by what you see here to give it a try. Julie says, another thing about sketchnoting versus most project organizers / managers is that it allows images and sketches. Most of those task manager tools are heavily based toward text only or text mostly. Yeah, that's why I'm kind of going more or less all in on Notion compared to something like Rome or from what I've seen of Obsidian. A lot of it is like very text based, and you can do cool things with kind of markdown and like building, kind of code snippets into that note-taking process. But from what I've seen, none of those handle images very well. But I think Notion does a pretty good job of it. And I bet in the future we'll continue to do interesting things, especially if folks like us show kind of what we want to use Notion for, and maybe encourage Notion to build in features that are that allow you to work with images in an even more dynamic way. Donaldo says, agree with Julie. I've tried other knowledge management tools. Hey, I didn't even see that comment yet, but Obsidian and Rome, they're lacking. Vicky says, I use Notion for everything, including as a content editor for our podcast. Awesome. It's helped me eliminate a bunch of different apps / docs I was using and put everything into one place. So powerful and free. Yeah. Let me just show you real quick the pricing breakdown, because you can get started for free. Here we go. And from just to let you know, the Notion plan that I use is this personal pro one. I don't even think I'm paying annually. I think I pay monthly $5. And it's crazy that like $5 a month, unlimited file uploads. And that means that it's like unlimited website building. And not even one website. You could build like multiple websites using Notion, which is just like crazy to me. So this is where I'm hanging out right now. Again, I mentioned some teams, some organizations use it because you can have kind of multiple users connected to one Notion account. I'm not planning on going in that direction, but a lot of teams are doing that and find it to be interesting and helpful. Catching up again with the text chat. I really appreciate you guys sharing these ideas. Having a little bit of back and forth is super helpful for me during these live streams, so I love it. Aurora Optima says, I store a whole dictionary of sketch notes in OneNote. Cool. I'm curious, what is the difference to Notion? Yeah, that could be an interesting comparison. I'm not familiar enough with OneNote to be able to kind of like riff on a comparison between OneNote and Notion, but I bet Google or YouTube search will bring up some comparisons. Vicky says that there's an app called Readwise that I use to help me import book and article highlights into Notion. All my Kindle book highlights in one place is pretty incredible. Yeah, so there's ways like of what I've shared so far is using Notion as a place once the sketchnote is completed But there is a lot of, depending on your sketchnoting process, it can serve as a great tool for creating your sketchnote, creating, kind of compiling the initial source material, maybe your initial bullet point notes before you actually do the visual. And that is something that I want to build into Notion for Sketchnoters, is that I think you can weave a sketchnoting process into this system if you're interested. But like, you don't have to do that to use this, which is nice. Flexibility and customization is a big thing with Notion that is pretty cool. Julie says it seems like Notion fits into the various places in V2V where the Zettelkasten, second brain concepts have been arising. Yeah, Zettelkasten, second brain, and learning in public. Like, I'm so excited about where this could go. Mrs. Zarf says use Notion for work, to watch students' progress, education application there. Jose Miguel says the only thing keeping me using Obsidian compared to Notion, don't have a complete offline mode. Okay, yeah, so that might be a barrier within Notion if there's not a offline mode. You kind of always have to be connected. From Lizzie, we hear OneNote versus Notion. In Notion, you can make databases so you can easily connect things. Yes, databases and connections. Great transition into a little bit of a project walkthrough. Let's head back over to the browser here, and I will share the homepage of Notion for Sketchnoters. And I'm going to take a sip of coffee. I have, in the description below, kind of right before this live stream started, I updated that description and I shared a link to this project homepage and also a link to a new YouTube channel that I just started called Notion for Sketchnoters. I wanted to create a different space to document this project. And it felt different enough from the teaching of sketchnoting that I kind of wanted its own space for it. So you'll find those links down in the description if you want to check that out. This is a public-facing page. So this page was built using Notion, and it's literally just like a toggle that allows me to make it public, turn it into a public website. And this is what I'm building here. I'm building a knowledge management and portfolio system built using Notion that helps sketchnoters store, share, and reuse their work. So let me walk you through what exists so far, kind of on this project homepage. A little bit of like scene setting here. What do you do with a sketchnote once you've completed it? Does it live in a notebook, never to be seen again, or is it stored and shared in a way that supports you over time? What you capture now has the potential to provide substantial impact in the future, but only if you've built a system for it to resurface when you need it. I'm building a tool to help sketchnoters store and share their work in a way that supports their long-term goals. The end of the sketchnote is just the start of its impact. So that's just a little bit of a mission statement. The thing that I am building, to kind of get to some specifics here, are kind of a set of Notion templates that if you use Notion, you will easily be able to add to your workspace. And there are kind of two main branches to these, the templates, two components to it. There's this private workspace where you'll be able to store your completed sketch notes, track your sketch notes in progress, and work on projects that involve combining sketch notes for something like an article that you're working on, a presentation that you're working on, or any other creative endeavor. So having this private workspace that is engaging for you, that helps you to do the work that matters to you, that's what the private workspace is about. And it's about kind of going beyond the finished sketch note, and then like, it's easy to finish a sketch note and say like, oh, that looks good, or that doesn't look as good as I like. And then maybe you share it on social media, or maybe it just goes in a folder. I want to create a space that allows you to do more with the sketch notes you've created. The public portfolio is the second piece of it. This is where you'll be able to share your sketch notes, and only those you want to be public. Like any individual thing within your Notion setup, you can choose whether it's public or private. And that goes for your sketch notes too. and maybe you have some written reflections all on a public facing website like this one, still just using Notion, no need to buy a domain or worry about hosting, along with any other information you'd like to share with folks who come across your work. So your homepage, like this page right here, you can include whatever else you want, add whatever other pages about the different things you're working on, what you want to do in the future, where folks can connect with you on social media. It can do all of those things. I am building these templates right now, and I wanted to let you know that the first version of this, Notion for Sketchnoters 1.0, I'll be releasing that on August 3rd, so like just a couple of weeks from now. So that's when the first set of downloadable Notion templates will be available. And for this project, to access that Notion system and do things like provide feature requests for future versions, come support this project on Patreon. I'll give an overview of the Patreon in a second here, but to share what else I've included on this page, modeling what you might include on your kind of public page, let's check out the Sketchnote Gallery. So here's what a public portfolio of sketchnotes might look like using Notion. I have only added kind of a handful of my sketchnotes to this, but I will continue adding all of my past sketchnotes to this public portfolio as well as future sketchnotes. But then if we kind of like dig into any individual one, you can see the information associated with this individual sketchnote. And this is where you start to see some database things. So these fields are consistent across every single sketchnote. There's a date created field. There's a people field where you can share whose ideas it is that you're sketchnoting or who kind of shows up in those sketchnotes. I like having a summary here, both for me to summarize what I learned or what the sketchnote is all about, and maybe someone who does a Google search about these ideas, they might make their way to this page. In this case, while reflecting back on 2020, Todd Henry shares the 5 most important lessons he learned. Link to the information source. I've tagged this as a podcast. I've also tagged kind of the most important concepts that are addressed within these sketchnotes. And it's this kind of tagging, especially the concepts tag, that I think will allow you to do some really interesting things within the private workspace as far as kind of working with these ideas in the future. As your library of sketchnotes grow, eventually you might do, you might want to see like, okay, let me see all the sketchnotes that address strategy or diversity. So this conceptual tagging and having that as part of the building blocks here, I think there will be a lot of interesting things that you can do with that. Then I have this follow-up. This is kind of for me to identify what do I want to do as a follow-up to these sketchnotes. And in this case, I took these sketchnotes at the beginning of the year. So as a follow-up, I mentioned in 2021, while continuing to build verbal to visual, I want to start diversifying more my portfolio with a couple of specific projects. Essay writing on Medium, kind of identified that as at the beginning of the year as something that I wanted to do as a way of diversifying my portfolio of work. But then as of a few weeks ago, this project here, Notion for Sketchnoters, is another way of diversifying my creative projects. And then you kind of get into the body of this note of this thing here. And this is where you can include images, you can add captions. So what I've done is I broke down this overall sketchnote into the individual pieces. And the way it works inside Notion is this image and caption is one block. These are kind of like reusable blocks that you can pull. You can copy and then paste and sync these blocks. So this combo of image and caption, and use that as the starting point for future projects. So in this case, I'm not really treating this. I'll make this a little bigger here. I'm not really treating this as a kind of super blog post public format thing in terms of like writing an introduction about these things. It's more kind of a database of interesting ideas, where within the caption I do my own summarize. I summarize in my own words the ideas within that image. And it's that summarizing that will reinforce those ideas, and those words will give me a starting point whenever I want to bring this into a future presentation or article or project. So this is what the storage of an individual sketchnote might look like. Let's go take a look at another one, just like a single page one here. This is a sketchnote of Mike Rohde's conversation with David Britton on the Sketchnote Army podcast. Again, these are the main concepts that were explored. Got a summary there, the follow-up. These foundations align well with my approach to sketchnoting. So continue experimenting with the tool concepts and refining my process for using it. So here it's just the one big image. I didn't feel it necessary to kind of break it down, and then kind of a caption summarizing the takeaways. So that's what kind of a public portfolio of sketchnotes might look like. You can kind of see how these can build up over time. And again, these are all individual pages on your website that, if you're on like that first tier of paid plan, you can make them indexed so that SEO, so that search engines might throw up your post here if whatever the person searches aligns with, you know, the concepts and the texts on this page. So for folks to find your public Notion page via something like a Google search, I think you do need to be on that like first paid tier. Just a heads up about that. But yeah, I'm excited about this format. Again, thinking of each of these as individual building blocks. Let's head back to the homepage here. Speaking of the new YouTube channel, this is where I will just be kind of sharing each of those individual videos. And this is kind of like the behind the scenes of watching me build out this project. So if you like the idea of seeing kind of those nuts and bolts, then check out the YouTube channel, subscribe. I've got 3 videos up so far. I want to include a space within this project homepage to shout out folks that are using Notion for Sketchnoters to create their own public portfolio of sketchnotes. So that will be, you know, hopefully some of you maybe will be included on this shout outs page. And it is kind of connected to one of the tiers on Patreon if you're interested in supporting this project. To round out this kind of homepage here, I shout out the Patreon where you can support this project. I also, like, since Notion for Sketchnoters isn't about teaching the skill of sketchnoting, I want to make sure to point people to verbal to visual if they want to connect there and really build out their sketchnoting skills. So this is an example of like how you might point people to other places on the web if you want them to connect with you elsewhere. And then, like, I'm building the tool that I wish existed. Come along for the ride. Let me show you what's going on within the Patreon, except I don't want to look at that one because it's kind of the internal. I'll just do this. I'll just log out. Whoops. Let's go back to Patreon. But then I'm going to log out of my account so that you can see what it will look like for you. So here's the Notion for Sketchnoters. We're creating software. It's fun to kind of dig into this type of project. And if you're interested in supporting this, if you like the idea of what I've been talking about here, these are the different membership levels. Let me get my face out of the way. There we go. At the $5 a month tier, that's where you'll get access to all the Notion templates that I'm working on. You can request features for future versions, ask questions about putting this system to use. At the $10 per month, that includes a live stream if you want to connect on the first Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So our first live stream connected to this project will be kind of a few weeks away, the first week in August, the first Thursday in August. That's where you can share your work and talk about maybe specific customizations that you would like to do to your Notion system. And then the third tier here, if you want to be included on that shoutouts page, that's the extra little perk for supporting this project at that upper tier. So if you want to support this project and get access to kind of this, like what I hope is a really dynamic plug and play system, I guess it's kind of equal parts. It is a little bit plug and play. It can be plug and play if you want it to, but it can also be kind of infinitely customizable. That's what excites me about this project. So if you're excited about that too, do consider supporting on Patreon. If that's not of interest to you yet, maybe just check out the YouTube channel, subscribe there, and follow along. Go back here for a second, and I will catch up on the text chat if you have any comments or questions about this as we kind of start to maybe wrap up this live stream. I hope you're intrigued and interested by this new project. Lizzie says, Julie says the idea of search engines throwing up their results is just plain funny. Someone is spending a lot of time with babies. Might be. Got two newborns, 3-month-old twins that are sleeping pretty well. I don't hear them, so they must be sleeping pretty well right now. So if you have got any questions or comments that you want to throw into the text chat, I'll hang out just for a few minutes here. I'm gonna take off pretty soon to pick back up with the taking care of babies role. But if there's anything you want to riff on, I'd be curious to hear about it. If not, we can continue these conversations elsewhere. Gonna double check my sketch to see if there's anything else that I intended to share today. I think we got it all. Lizzie says, I love the idea of adding sketches to my Notion environment, so definitely going to follow your project. Thanks, Lizzie. Maria says, I think it's a great idea. However, I think Notion doesn't let us to customize much our sketches there. Yeah, Notion is not in any way a tool for drawing or creating your sketches. So it is like a tool that, like, the creating the sketchnote itself, at least drawing it, that's going to help that will happen elsewhere, either in your notebook, like your pen and paper notebook, or on your tablet, and then you kind of upload your finished sketchnote to this system, is the idea. Vicky says, exciting stuff. Thank you, Vicky. You've already given me some great ideas. Glad to hear it. Yeah, if you like anything that you've heard here, just like start running with it yourself. Like, see how you might weave sketchnotes into your own Notion system and explore what a database of sketchnotes might look like for you. Suzanne says, thanks. Thank you, Suzanne. Julie says, I've often considered using WordPress to do something like that, but the technology and the learning overhead has been more than I'm willing to spend. This looks easier. Yeah, I think this is an easier approach to getting any public website up, really. and anything that like fits within the realm of like a wiki as a knowledge database or a portfolio. That's what I see Notion being useful for in terms of creating that public website. Samwise the Brave says, thanks from Bavaria, Germany. Hey, thanks for hanging out here, Samwise. Benoit, I'm so 2010. How would you compare Notion to Google Drive Suite? I mean, maybe it is 2010 versus 2021 is the best way to compare that. I'm not familiar with Google Drive to know that. My sense is that it's like Notion is less clunky maybe than Google Drive, and with the like database integration, I think that there's more that you can do with Notion. I think it's a more dynamic tool set and environment. But kind of going off of some assumptions there. Julie asks, are you already using Notion for other tasks in your life? So you're already in there. Yeah, I am already in there. And I'll probably do some more sharing of that. In one of the videos, I referenced kind of when I was first getting to know Notion, I leaned heavily on August Bradley's YouTube channel. I think I probably shared that in the first video on Notion for Sketchnoters. August Bradley is a guy who uses Notion like kind of to the most extreme that you could ever use Notion. He's like building a life operating system using Notion. There's some really intriguing and cool things to his approach. It's heavier handed than the way that I want to approach using Notion. But my first setup as I was setting up my Notion kind of followed his model. Yeah, so I used it heavily for a good kind of 6 months with his system. Found it to be a little bit too much, so kind of stepped away for a little bit, went a little more analog for a while, but then recognized like, no, I do need like a digital storage place and kind of repository. So that's when I hopped back in and started thinking about a simplified version of it. Simplified version of a private workspace, but then like thinking more and more about the public portfolio piece. So that's a little bit of the evolution. Isla says, I do a lot of sketchnoting stuff for Iowa State University. That's awesome. I would love to look into this project more. Cool. Follow along. Subscribe to the YouTube channel over there. Vicky says there's so many ways to connect everything in Notion. Yeah, and it's all like a thing about Notion that I find to be cool is it's very much in active development. They're continually kind of building new things into it. Most recently, synced blocks is one of the things that you can look into, and a whole API that allows just for different tools like Evernote can integrate with Notion. What are other examples of like integration? Slack can integrate with Notion. They're opening things up for other tools to integrate with this tool. And they also describe Notion as like when they first built it, they wanted to create a very usable system for individuals to build their own software, like without needing to know how to code, like build your own software with Notion. So it's kind of in that direction that the fact that they're going in that direction excites me. Even though right now it's very much in this world of kind of like templates and project management. They're going to keep, from what I can tell, and like the assumptions that I'm making is that they're going to keep making this a dynamic and useful tool. Julie says, since Notion is a database operation at its task management heart, and Google Drive Suite is basically a file system. That's a good way of describing the differences. Yeah. Donaldo says, seeing how to pair Notion with a preferred sketchnoting tool might be helpful. Yeah, those will be some fun links to explore. Excited to see how others may use Notion, possibly a developer community emerges. Yeah. I'm just thinking about like concepts the opportunity or the potential for concepts having like an export to Notion tool or feature. That could be cool. And hey, since I kind of have a little bit of a connection with David Britton, since we exchanged some emails when I put out that Sketchnote summary of his conversation with Mike Rohde, I can drop into his inbox and be like, hey, how might these two link up? I feel like he would, just having a conversation with him about that actually would be really cool. Vicky says, love August. I used his idea of a content pipeline to build my content editor for my podcast. It's pretty advanced though. Yeah, he gets into really advanced stuff and like way into the weeds of all of the database and like linking one database to another. There's some of that I want to do because there's some cool potential there, but I don't plan to go as deep as August Bradley does into some of that stuff. Donaldo says, can definitely see myself adding some templates related to my projects. Cool. Vicky was just hooking up Slack right before this call. Hey, awesome, Vicky. Now I'm glad I've got my kind of Notion plus sketchnoting community expert. That's how I'm thinking of you, Vicky. Thanks for coming along and sharing. Maybe we can have a chat about what you're up to. And I feel like because of your experience with Notion, you might see some possibilities here that I haven't seen yet. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you all so much for hanging out. It was really fun sharing these ideas with you. Really fun having a bit of back and forth. Thanks to folks who are sharing some ideas in the text chat. If you were just watching along, I appreciate that as well. And for those who caught the replay, feel free to add your comments in the kind of normal comment section below this video. This is a tool, like I mentioned, that I'm building the tool that I wish existed. But as I started building it, I realized how fun it would be to bring other people along because I want it to be a tool for you as well. So that's why I'm kind of launching it in this public way and creating opportunities for you to access the resources that I'm building, but also inform them. That's what I want. I want to build a tool that's useful for sketchnoters. That's kind of what it comes down to. So thank y'all. Good luck exploring Notion if you haven't seen it yet. Maybe starting to play around with adding sketch notes to it, and hope to see it in future comment sections over on the YouTube channel, and maybe if you're extra interested on Patreon as well.